Let's take a look at ETC. Many would tell you this is a dead blockchain, a shitcoin that isn't worth buying. Others will tell you that it's the only other cryptocurrency gold other than Bitcoin. There's not honestly a lot of people whose opinions are kind of in between these. So who's right? Or at least who's closer to the truth? In today's snapshot, we're going to dig into the nitty gritty. Just remember that, as usual, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. You should always do your own research. Now, philosophically, Ethereum Classic is a fully open source blockchain dedicated to the ideas of immutability and fungibility. The hill that its community will die on is, code is law. That's what they always say, code is law. They're so dedicated to this idea that they actually wouldn't roll back money stolen after the infamous DAO hack that motivated the fork between ETC and ETH. As you probably know at this point, if you're watching this video, ETC is the original Ethereum blockchain. It all kind of started out that way, and then ETC did a hard fork off to ETH, so you had both ETC and ETH because of a difference in philosophy as far as exactly how to handle the fact that they got hacked for so much money. As it's open source, it's developed by Ethereum Classic Labs and a couple of other organizations. But IOHK also contributes with Charles Hodgkinson of Cardano fame, taking a personal interest in the project, going so far as to join the board of directors of the ETC Cooperative, another major organization contributing mainly to financing the ETC ecosystem development. I'm not going to belabor that backstory of how ETH and ETC split, as if you're watching this, you probably know. That's probably potentially the only thing you're familiar with regarding ETC. For many, the only thing they know for sure is that the chain got hacked and the two resulting Ethereums went their separate ways. In crypto time, this was so long ago, it's not really so much of a relevant issue right now, in my eyes. Let's focus instead on what makes the chain tick, although we will kind of come back to the DAO hack near the end there. So what are the properties of ETC? ETC has a fixed monetary policy. Its maximum coin number is capped at just around a little over 210 million. Block rewards are cut by 20% every 5 million blocks. ETC is a proof of work blockchain, Nakamoto consensus, and it will always remain so. Its algorithm is technically no longer ETH hash. It's ETC hash. Therefore, ETC can't really be mined by the same ASICs as ETH. It uses gas fees just like ETH 1.0 before EIP 1559, which goes live today, by the way. ETC has programmable smart contracts in Solidity, used also by ETH, running the Ethereum virtual machine, also used by ETH, although with Ethereum 2.0, we're actually going to be switching to EWASM, Ethereum web development tools. It'll make it more accessible to developers. So what is the bull case for ETH and who is making it? So we're going to talk about two entities making the bull case for ETC and what they're saying. One is Grayscale and one is Donald Mcintyre of etherplan.com. Let's talk about Grayscale first. A lot of you probably know about Grayscale. It's one of the biggest whale institutions in all of crypto at the moment. They're opening up these, Bitcoin Trust, Ethereum Trust. They have an Ethereum Classic Trust. And with each of these trusts that they open, they have an investment thesis saying, like, why is it that we even have this trust? What should investors expect? Why is there any sort of potential value, or what are the sources of alpha within this investment? Here's the Cliff Notes. I believe it's something like an 11-page document, link in the description. Grayscale thinks that basically ETC has nearly identical real-world applications to ETH. However, the differences in governance economics and protocol development structures warrant investment in both. They seem to be pretty cool with the principles of decentralization and immutability, and when they detail what exactly they mean about the store of value alpha, they go over those points individually. But they probably, because they're so heavily invested in Ethereum, they refrain from really harping on whether they think these will be, decisive factors moving forward, given some of the structural changes that ETH has gone through. Whoever wins, they just want the money, like most of us. They also point out the importance of ETC's fixed monetary supply from an economic perspective. which is a point we'll see raised again later by Donald Mcintyre. They go over the various players contributing to development, which I've already kind of presented. There's the ETC Labs, there's ETC Cooperative, IOHK. The two main drivers of alpha that they have identified are its store of value function and its ability to serve as a scarce commodity driving the Internet of Things, or the new web. For more on these concepts in detail, check out my blockchain and cryptocurrency video in the top right. With their last section, they have basically how to incorporate ETC into a portfolio. So once again, link in the description if you're interested in getting a more detailed investment grade idea of how exactly you might want to do that. And then we have Donald Mcintyre. You go on YouTube and you look up just about any ETC bull out there, and they'll give you a link on this particular Etherplane article, link in the description, talking about how ETC will surge past $7,000 in the next year, which, let's be serious, that's an absolutely incredible price prediction, the likes of which you don't really see very often. And remember, ETC was trading at like below $20 when this was published. You got to have balls of steel to be forecasting 350x returns, even if it is a decade in the future, on what's broadly viewed by many as a dead chain. With a specific prediction like this, what we're going to need are some specifics before we're convinced. So we'll go point by point through his thesis here. His first point is interesting and not one that I necessarily agree with myself, to be honest. Only a few chains will win out long term, is what he says. He's not a straight up maximalist, but he believes in the dominance of BTC and ETH are basically that the current market portends future conditions. I don't think there's much reason to believe this, honestly. I think multiple chains can win out depending on how broad the market is. And more importantly, even if it is just a few chains, we're so early in the adoption of cryptocurrency that the top ones in 10 years may not even resemble the top ones today. It may not be a variation of ETH. It may not be Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or whatever, any variation of the things that we already have. But that aside, he basically says as a second point that Nakamoto consensus, proof of work basically, Dagger Nakamoto being one of the original algorithms for proof of work, is the most secure consensus mechanism. Somewhat hilariously, he cites himself twice as a source for why this is. Delving into his other articles that he cites, I'm not overly moved, to be honest. One of his arguments seems to be basically a game of semantics regarding what exactly constitutes a blockchain and whether proof of stake is actually blockchain technology anymore, because according to him, proof of work is almost definitional to blockchain. Which, to his credit, you can kind of conceptualize it that way. However, in light of modern environmental concerns, misguided as they often might be, definitely in the case of Bitcoin, nowadays, I doubt we will again, I doubt that will actually gain much mainstream acceptance, this particular way of looking at blockchain. He says that proof of stake is inherently centralized based on money, almost like the current centralized banking system. The really rich have the most control, which is fair. But to be honest, proof of work can also be centralized simply by hash power. ETC is the prime example of this. There's only like 2 mining pools, more or less rule ETC right now. Next, he talks about how ETC will be the only top proof of work smart contracts blockchain. The argument implicitly relying on his faith in proof of work as the only way. But admittedly, this does also make ETC pretty unique. Next, let me read you a quote. ETC has never been hacked, and the historic 51% attacks on the network only show that it worked as designed. Oh my God. I mean, you almost got to point and laugh at this one. I mean, what? This is a level of delusion I haven't heard in a while. ETC split from ETH as a result of a hack. There were 3 51% attacks in 2020 alone. If that's how the network was intended to run, my man, ain't nobody going to buy these coins. Now, to be fair to him, if proof of work coins like BTC the Big Boy and ETH 1.0 were attacked at this same size, the same result would have and did happen. And really the hash power is directly proportional to security and proof of work, which, so, that's not a uniquely ETC problem. Next, it has a capped supply, as we've mentioned earlier, that provides a certain scarcity, and that can be good for the value appreciation of the coin. Next, it comes with he has the presupposition that ETC will supplant ETH as the second place base layer queen, as it were, once ETH goes proof of stake. So, I mean, that's technically true by default. Just looking at market caps, that's pretty much the case, given especially that, just about everything else these days is proof of stake or migrating proof of stake. ETC will never do that. So BTC is really unlikely to do that in the future. ETC is very unlikely to do that in the future. If that base layer, this is his next point, essentially. He pretty much says that base layer of proof of stake blockchains is going to be valuable as gold, which is, the whole BitGold investment thesis, which I actually think is one of the stronger points here. The idea of scarcity in a digital asset providing value like gold and allowing it to be pretty much digital property is part of why Microsystems, Michael Saylor is bullish on Bitcoin as digital gold. ETC is a lot like that with smart contracts, which is almost kind of like better by default, one would think. He then concludes by directly calculating his price prediction of, $7,000 plus in the next decade by comparing the total base layer's value to the value of gold, which he assumes basically that BTC would be 50% of 50% of the value of gold market cap, and ETC would be 25% of that 50%. With the implication almost that we're being generous here by only using half of gold's value, because really it's BitGold and it should be at least as valuable as gold. Now, ETC from a fundamental perspective has potentially a lot to give. Some of the basic assertions that we see in these bull cases, the points regarding proof of work and the value of the BitGold base layer, will be challenged and clarified over the next few years, I think. I think we're going to have a much better idea of whether these points in the investment theses are valid or not soon, honestly, sooner than later, probably. Myself, I'd also add that DeFi is a huge market, multiple trillions, tens of trillions. And if ETC can capture even, being that it's a smart contract platform, can capture even 1% of that overall market in the next decade, then 7,000, to be honest, would potentially be conservative. But only time will tell. Are you convinced? Let me know down in the comments. As always, guys, like if you liked the video, dislike if you didn't. Sub if you'd like more like this on health, fitness, medicine, crypto, personal finance. See you in the next one.